Encouraged by the success of the improvements I made to my Hornby pug, I thought I would try to modify and improve another cheap 040 loco. This time, the Holden Tank. I'm going to stretch my limited boduling skills even further this time, so stay with me and find out how I get on. The first thing I want to do is to remove all the moulded handrails and replace them with wire ones. As a result of this, the body will require a complete repaint. The opportunity will also be taken to add other small details such as lamp irons, vacuum pipes, a lamp, crew and some real coal in the bunker. The loco I am working on is this rather garish bright red Hornby centenary year tank. I intend to finish it in early BR weathered black livery. The first stage, as ever, is to split the model down into its component parts. The chassis has been removed, and as can be seen, and somewhat surprisingly to me, the body is in two parts. The main body shell and the cab floor stroke bunker assembly. The moulded coal load was carefully removed from the bunker. The moulded handrails have been removed, initially with a sharp scalpel, and then tidied up with some fine wet and dry abrasive paper. Holes have been drilled for the handrail knobs. Full details of all the parts used can be found in my previous video modifying the Hornby pug. Handrails were fitted and glued to the knobs with super glue. I still can't get on terribly well with this, and one handrail came loose later, but at least they're on now. The rail around the smoke box door took several attempts, and it's still not quite right, but it's not bad for a beginner, eh? I still think my ham-fisted efforts look better than the moulded handrails they replaced though. 3 lamp irons were added to the footplate and 1 positioned on top of the smoke box. I like my locos to be as heavy as possible to aid adhesion and help to improve electrical pickup. I therefore added some lead sheet to the insides of the tank. As I have already mentioned, I had previously removed the moulded coal load from the bunker, which revealed a space into which more lead sheet could be glued. This will of course be covered in coal later. I wish to retain the loco numbers on the cab sides, so they were masked off and 2 coats of rail match primer were airbrushed onto the body and bunker. At this stage the loco was now beginning to look a bit less like a toy. 2 coats of Humbrol matte black enamel were airbrushed on. I don't know if my tin of enamel paint was a bit old, but the finish has come out rather rougher and more textured than I had hoped. Transfers adhere better to a gloss finish rather than a matte surface, so a slightly dilute Humbrol gloss coat was brushed onto the whole body. This did not seem to improve matters much. The surface was still too rough, so another 2 coats were brushed on. The body colour was now darker than before, but the sides were still not as smooth as I would have liked. I am wondering whether I should have used Humbrol Gloss Varnish rather than Humbrol Gloss Coat. The Hornby moulded coal load was made slightly smaller and a brake handle added. This was cut down from a brake stand on an old Hornby Schools loco. Sacrilege or what? The whole assembly was then glued into the bunker. The buffer beams were brush painted with 3 coats of Humbrol red, the masking removed and the transfers from Fox models applied. Much to my surprise and relief, the transfers adhered very well. The buffers were weathered and had some slightly shiny centres added. A Springside model's lamp was glued to the front footplate, and vacuum pipes were added to the front and rear buffer beams. The whole loco was given a light coating of my normal weathering mix from my airbrush and left to dry thoroughly. Finally, as far as the body was concerned, everything was protected by spraying with Rail Match matte varnish. The wheels and chassis were treated to a coat of my usual dirty weathering colour. It's a tedious process and doesn't do your brushes much good, but it really helps to make a simple toy chassis look much better. In addition to the weights added to the body, I decided also to make the chassis much heavier. Small pieces of lead sheet were cut out and glued in the front of the chassis, just inboard of the cylinders, and some larger ones were inserted into the well in the rear of the chassis under the cab floor. Whilst I was removing the plastic coal load from the bunker, I damaged one of the lugs that secures it to the chassis, one of those there. I therefore thought that when I reassembled the loco, I would probably need to glue the bunker and not just rely on the lugs to hold it in place. I also wanted to add crew to the footplate, so in a mad moment I cut the bunker away from the piece of footplate that it had previously been on. I'm not sure this was a good idea. We shall see. At this stage I felt I had gone as far as I wished with the loco, and so the body was reunited with the chassis. The Hornby crew were glued in, and then it was time to fix the bunker to the footplate. As I had removed the piece of floor that had been attached to the bunker, the lugs that had previously helped to secure it in place were no longer sufficient. It still fitted correctly in place, but wobbled a little, so it is now glued on permanently. I have used a little super glue, and knowing my usual success with this product, I expect it will be no problem at all to remove it, should that ever be necessary. And now, as usual, a couple of shots of the loco posed on my layout pastiche. I reckon it looks every inch the sort of work-stained shunter that would have been seen on British railways in the early 1950s. And finally, some video showing the loco in action. I have no idea how fast it will go, as that doesn't interest me, but slow running is a must. As can be seen, it is fully controllable right down to a barely discernible crawl. And it goes just as well in reverse. To sum up, I think this little budget loco looks great, and it performs superbly. I am extremely pleased with it. I hope you've enjoyed this video, but that's all for now. See you next time.